What's up? This is Scott the Frozen Gamer. Are you ready to turn your living room into mission control? If so, get ready to watch how to play this 3X game, boom! SpaceCorp 2025 to 2300 AD by John Butterfield and GMT Games. Now let's go down to the table and see how it plays. Welcome to the first era of SpaceCorp. This is the Mariners 2025 to 2069 era, and this is what the overall setup will look like with 2 more player boards if you're playing a 3-player game, as I am setting up for this example. When you teach SpaceCorp, I would suggest to teach the Mariners mechanisms first, and then when you get to the second and third eras of the game, to add in the new mechanisms that go on top of what Mariners has already taught us. Teach those then, don't teach them right all at the beginning, because it will be too much to remember for stuff that you won't need for an hour or so down the road. The first thing you want to do when you set up is put the main board in the middle, and then right next to it you want the business display board. The business display board is set up for 1 to 2 players or 3 to 4 players, so make sure it's on the appropriate side, and then put all the orange discs going down in the appropriate spot on the left side of the display. When you grab your personal player board, make sure that it has all 3 era symbols on it if you're playing the full campaign. If you're not playing the full campaign, make sure you have grabbed the appropriate player board that matches the eras that you are playing. The Mariners era, the first era of the game, always has the moon symbol to designate that era. So make sure that all the components you're using for that era has those moons on them. We have 2 beyond markers in the game, and in the Mariners era, they start in the asteroid belt in the top right corner of the game board. Make sure to place both of them right there. Grab the player color that you want to play with and start setting up your bases in the designated spots on your HQ player board. You'll also start with 4 cubes of your color, 1 black cube, 1 brown cube. Now 2 of the cubes, the black cube and the secure, shield factory, and exploiter bases, you can just keep off to the side because you will not need them in the Mariners first era of the game. Place 2 of your Space Team cubes in Earth to start the game. Place your tan cube at the top of the progress wheel. In other eras, you'll need your black cube to start there as well, but not in the Mariners era. Grab the Mariners action deck and take out the 12 start cards marked here and put them to the side. Then grab the time cards and add the appropriate number to the deck. In a 3-player game, we're going to add 2 time cards to the deck. The rest of the time cards put to the side, and then shuffle the Mariners deck to make the draw pile. Every player is going to start with 1 chemical drive from the start card in their hand. Then they're going to take the rest of the start cards, shuffle them up, and put them on the top of the deck. From the set aside time cards, every player will grab 1 and put it in their personal hand. The rest of the set aside time cards can go away in the game box. They will not be needed. These cards are face up only for the example. They will be private cards that only you get to see in your hand in the actual game. In a 3-player game, the second and third players in turn order get another card from the top of the Mariners deck to their hand. Then check the rules if you're playing 2 or 4 players. The first 2 players will start their profit markers on 0. The third player will start it on 1. This is the victory track for the game. The top 4 cards from the deck go on the offer boxes on the left side of the main board. Everything else will be used in the 2 later eras of the game, so you can put them away for now. Now we are ready to play the game. In SpaceCorp, there are 6 phases to every turn of the game that you can see in the bottom left of your HQ player board. 1, conduct an action. 2, claim contract awards. 3, opponents can claim rewards. 4, perform a free team transport. 5, discard played cards and replenish any offers. 6, draw a card if you have 4 or less in your hands. And then opponents may also play certain edge cards during your turn. So let's break down these phases. So phase 1 is conduct an action. There are multiple actions we're going to go over here. All but 2 of them are based off of values. Each value for an action starts at 0, and you can add to those values by any combination of the following. Using these numbers from your infra, which is off your HQ, playing cards from your hand and using the values there, using a base ability, and spending profit. In later eras, there are other ways as well. There's going to be times you have to multiply values. In SpaceCorp, you always do the addition and subtraction before multiplying. So opposite of what you learned from basic algebra rules. When you use infra, you look at yours or an opponent's HQ and add up all the actions for the type you're doing. So here we look at green and we'll have a total move value of 3. We do not discard the card off your HQ if there is one, so that move 2 will stay there for the rest of the era if we wanted to. And if you use an opponent's infra, they'll get a reward in phase 3 of this turn. Once an end of an era is triggered, an opponent's infra cannot be used anymore. You can also play cards from your hand, and again, this will actually be hidden in the game and not open like it is here. This is in addition to or instead of using infra. Whatever action we decide to do, we lay down the cards of that action and add up the values. So let's say we wanted to move still, we lay down those 2 green move cards from our hand and then add up the values, which is 4. And then if we wanted to use the infra as well, then we'd do the 4 plus the 3 from our infra board and we'd have a move value of 7. The move 3 intercept card has a second action on it, but that is an or action. You don't get to use both of them. So we can either move 3 or play the card as an edge. You can play a time card if you're doing a move, build, or explore action represented by the green or orange or blue rectangles at the bottom of the card there. The time card lets you double your total value of the action or apply the action's total value twice, so you can conduct the same action with 2 of your space teams, doing one whole team's first and then the other team's actions second. Move, produce, and colonize actions need a base to be present in that location to do them. If there is a base present, they may give you bonuses for your action value, like having a spaceport in the location you're flying from, which allows you to move, will add +2 to your movement in the Mariners era. Here are the actual actions in the game. Research is the purple action. You can only take this action if you have 7 or less cards in your hand. This action lets you take cards from the draw deck or face up from the offer boxes one at a time. You get to take as many cards as your research value allows you to. You can have as many cards in your hand as you like. There's no limit. So here, if we played 1 card from our hand and used our research infra, we'd have a research value of 4, so we could take 4 cards from the deck or from the offer boxes. Move is the green action. This allows you to move one of your space teams to a new site on the board. The value of your move total must meet or exceed the distance traveled. So for our example here, we have a move value of 7 between our hand and our infra. So if we want to move from Earth to Sisyphus, we can do so because we have 7 movement value, and from our handy dandy distance from Earth chart here, we see that Sisyphus is 6 away. So we can move all the way over there. When a team moves, it must always have a base in its current space or the space it's moving to. This doesn't have to be your base, it can be an opponent's space as well, but that opponent will get a reward in phase 3 of the turn if you use their base. So in our last move, it was totally fine because we do have a base built in on Earth. Now if we want to move from Sisyphus to Solar Lagrange point 5, we can't do so yet because we don't have a base in either of those locations. But let's say we had already built a base down at Solar Lagrange 5, now we can move there. Let's say we're moving from 2 locations that do not include Earth, like our last move from Sisyphus to Solar Lagrange point 5. How do we calculate our moves from there? 1, there's always a distance number marked in diamonds across the board. The second thing is you always calculate distance by adding 1 for takeoff and another 1 to land, and then you add the diamond total to it. So from Sisyphus to Solar Lagrange, like we just moved, we have 1 for takeoff from Sisyphus, 1 to move through this part of this region of the board to that region, and then 1 to land. So that is a total of 3. Let's say we want to move from Earth to Luna. First of all, we can because we have a base in Earth. Second, we had enough points, but let's calculate to make sure. We have to take 1 to take off from Earth, 1 to land at Luna. There is no diamond in between them, so it's a free movement. So that's 2. But Earth also has a gravity penalty. So that's gravity plus 2. So that's going to be 2 plus the 2 gravity penalty is 4 points to move from Earth to Luna. Just a note, there's a North Mars and a South Mars. Mars is so large that it has a travel cost of going from the top of Mars to the bottom of Mars of 3. But if you are traveling from North Mars to South Mars, it's actually going to cost 7 value to just do that, because North Mars to take off is 1, to land at South Mars is 1, 3 to travel, and then both of them have a gravity penalty of 1. So for a total of 7 to travel from North to South Mars. If you're lucky enough to move all the way out to the asteroid belt and you're one of the first 2 people that make it there, you get the respective first or second beyond markers. These go on your player boards and will give you bonuses for starting the next era. But once you go to the asteroid belt, that space team cannot be used for the rest of the era. The blue action is Explore. If you have a space team at an unexplored location, which is these boxes that are empty, you get to place a discovery tile at that site. Your explore action value must equal or exceed the location's explore cost. In Mariners, there's only going to be two different explore costs, 2 or 1. As you can see here, the Mars locations have an explore cost of 2, while Phobos and Deimos has an explore cost of 1. If a site doesn't have an explore cost, which is represented by a number on it, like the Lagrange points there, it cannot be explored. So let's say we're going to explore Sisyphus here. We had 2 explore, so we could explore that because it's a level 1. We're going to take a tile from the appropriate spot. Even though we had 2 explore, we only needed 1. We would have never used 2, but in this example, we're going to. And you flip it over and you put it in the box. This tile will remain in this location for the rest of the game. The bottom left of each explore token has an immediate award on it. So in our example of exotic elements there, it's 1T, which is $1 trillion, which is 1 victory point on our victory track. Some tiles will show pictures such as water or life, which may be important for different bases or contracts that we're trying to fulfill, and edges, which is an action we'll talk about soon. The bottom right will show an ongoing effect such as extra profit when using a produce action, or adding or subtracting values to build a base there. In later eras, you may see an effect that's in red, and that's a special effect which will be clarified in the rules. Last, put your team on top of that discovery. That shows you have claimed it, and it will only remain claimed as long as you have your team there. If you fly somewhere else, it will no longer be claimed by you. Our next action is the build action, which is the orange action. In our case here, we have a build value of 2. Assuming we had a build value of 4 or more, we could build in Sisyphus right now because it's been explored, we have a space team there, and we have at least 4 build value. As you look left to all the lunar and solar Lagrange points, they don't have an exploration box. As long as we have a space team there and we have the amount of build value to build there, build value 2 or 1, we can build in either of those locations. If there's a discovery currently claimed by one of our opponents when we build there, we can still do so, but that player will get 2 profit later in the game. There are 6 out of the 9 available bases in the Mariners era. They each have different prerequisites in order to be built. Whichever one you can and choose to build, they all have different effects as well. These are all listed on player aids and in the rulebook. Some bases give immediate effects, some are ongoing. And if you choose to use an opponent's base, they will get their reward in step 3. Once you've decided what you want to build, just place your build token in that location. Next up is the produce action, which is yellow. In our example here, we played 2 cards from our hand, totaling a produce value of 2. When you use a produce action, you look at the discovery tiles. If it has a P value on it, and you have a base there, you can produce. You do not need to have a space team there to produce. So in this example, we can produce at both of our locations because we have a base on both of them. And they both have a P value of 1 in the bottom right. Whatever value you played for your produce action is how many discovery tiles you get to produce at. So we had a produce value of 2, so we can produce at both of them. If we only had a produce value of 1, we could only produce at one of those 2 tiles. When you produce, you're going to gain profit equal to the number on all tiles you produce from. So in this case, 2. And then remember, certain bases can either create a production number on connected discovery tiles that weren't there to begin with, or enhance ones that were already on the tile. Because we got 2 profit from this action, we would move our victory track marker up 2 spots. Genetics is the tan action. In this example, we have played a genetics value of 1. When you play genetics, you get to move your tan cube on your player board the number of spaces as the genetic action value you just played, so we would get to move ours 1 spot. You'll start to receive benefits for making it all the way around the board in the second era, the Planeteers era. Don't worry, if you do make it around in the Mariners era, you still will get that reward in the Planeteers era. Upgrade is one of the 2 unique actions in the game that do not require a value. It allows you to add a card to your infra in slots 1, 2, or 3, or replace a card already on your infra on your HQ board. It cannot be placed in the research slots of your infra. So if this is our hand, the only cards we can upgrade are the ones that say may upgrade as infra on the bottom. So this one, but not this one, or this one. If I replace a card from the same era, so Mariners for Mariners in this example, the card I replace will go back into my hand. In future eras, if you replace a card from a previous era, the replaced card will be out of the game. You can only upgrade one card per turn. Special is the other unique action. It will be in a white box with a globe symbol next to it. You can only do one special per turn. It doesn't take any value, and simply do what the special box says. There are some cards that have an edge ability on them. The ability has a red border that says edge next to it. These are not actions. These can be used at the specific time the edge says to use it, sometimes during an opponent's turn. Do what the edge says and then discard the card. After you conduct one of these actions on your turn, phase 2 is claiming a contract. If you have met the prerequisite for one of the contracts that hasn't been fulfilled yet, you can claim it. Gain the profit that it shows for claiming it, and then slide the orange disc on top of it so you show that it's been claimed. You can claim multiple contracts in the same turn. If it's a base-related contract, you don't include your home base where you started, in this case on Earth. Phase 3 is opponents claim rewards. Throughout the action section, I mentioned multiple times that an opponent can gain a reward if you use their HQ infra or one of their bases. This is when they get that reward. Any opponent that earned a reward gets to claim the top card from the draw deck. Resolve the rewards in turn order if multiple opponents get one during the same turn. Phase 4 is transporting one of your space teams. If you did not perform an action with one of your space teams, you can relocate it. To qualify for a team transport, the team must begin at a site with one of their own bases. They must end at a location with one of their bases, no matter the distance. At least one of those bases must be a spaceport. You can only do this with one space team per turn. Phase 5 is to discard and replenish from the table. Any cards that weren't used to upgrade your HQ are discarded. Any cards that were taken from the 4 offer boxes get replaced with a card from the top of the deck. If the deck ever runs out of cards, you do not reshuffle the discarded cards, and any empty offer boxes will remain empty. The last phase, number 6, is to draw a card. If you have 4 or less cards in your hand, draw the top card from the deck into your hand. If the deck ever runs out of cards, if it's empty, you do not get to draw a new card. You keep doing these turns until the end of the era is triggered. We will end the Mariners era when one of the following happens. 6 of the 7 contracts have been claimed. When this happens, every other player gets one more turn, or when the action deck has been emptied. When this happens, the active player can choose to pass and skip their turn. If you can't perform an action, you must pass. Once you have passed, you're done playing for that era. In a 2-player game, once a player passes, the other player only gets one last turn. In a 3 or 4-player game, like we have here, once 2 players pass, the remaining player or players get one last turn. If you play the intercept edge after the end of an era has been triggered, you get an extra turn plus one last turn. Using opponent spaces and infra are not allowed once the end of an era has been triggered. If you want to continue to the Planeteers era, we have to do the following. First, you can add legacy production. Each player may choose one discovery tile on the board that has a P produce value on it that is in the same location as one of their bases. Remove the discovery tile and the base from the board and put it in the legacy production site on your HQ board. Like so. This is a site in the Planeteers era where you can produce from, but it does not count towards contracts. Then we need to reorganize cards. First, we take out all the time cards that were used in the Mariners era and set them aside for the Planeteers era. Any cards that we played as infra on our HQ are going to remain there for the Planeteers era. Any other cards in the game are removed from play. Then we're going to remove all the playing pieces from the board. All bases go back to your holding area in your HQ. Any discovery tiles that we use are going to go back into the game box. The beyond markers that were in the asteroid belt are going to be set up in the Planeteers, so we're going to just set them aside for now. Leave the business display exactly where it is. Do not move any of the orange contract fulfillment discs. Last, we're going to flip over the Mariners board. That will be a sideboard for the last 2 eras, and we're going to add the Planeteers board. We've just finished the Mariners era, and now we are on to Era 2 Planeteers from the years 2070 to 2149 as we expand out into the universe. And this is what a setup for Era 2 would look like in most cases. All the pieces will now be Planeteers, which has this Saturn-like planet symbol on it. The only things that are going to be left from Mariners is if you have any legacy production left from the Mariners, end of Mariners, or if you have any cards that you upgraded during Mariners. Our discovery tokens in Planeteers is now split up into 3 different levels, level 1, 2, and 3. Instead of having our 2 space teams start in Earth like we did in Mariners, in Planeteers we will have our 2 space teams starting in the inner solar system and traveling outwards throughout the game. If you were the one that got the first Beyond token in Mariners, in Planeteers you have the option of starting one of your space teams in series instead of in the inner solar system. If you do, draw and place one of the E1 discovery tiles face up there, and you get to take any of the immediate awards and claim the title. So here we would get 2 profit, and we would get to claim that tile. If you were able to get the second Beyond token in the Mariners era, in the Planeteers era you have an option of starting one of your space teams on the Vesta asteroid. But unlike the person that had the first Beyond token, this location will remain unexplored. To create the Planeteers action deck, as before, remove the Planeteer start cards and shuffle and deal 2 cards to each player. Each player gets a time card again, and the rest will be shuffled back into the deck. Then add the remaining start cards to the top of the deck, deal the top 4 cards. To create the Planeteers action deck, as before, remove the Planeteer start cards, and from those, shuffle them and deal 2 to each player. Each player then gets a time card again. The rest of the time cards will be shuffled in the deck. Then add the remaining start cards that you put aside and put them on the top of the deck. And then deal the top 4 cards from the deck into the offer area of the game board. On the new sideboard, we will place the adaptation and breakthrough cards with the Planeteer symbol on them on the appropriate spots. It will be on the left side of the sideboard. There will be multiple cards for each spot. Put the one with the profit symbol on the top, as you can see here with the energy fields. If anybody's Tangenetics cube made it full circle around the progress wheel during the Mariners era, they will get to choose a Tan adaptation card to start with during the game. Whoever starts on series goes first, in this case green. If nobody starts on series, then the lowest profit goes first, so that would be yellow. If tied, and the lowest profit, then you pick randomly to see who starts. There are only 8 real gameplay changes for Planeteers from how we played Mariners, which we'll discuss now. We're going to start running into radiation as we travel further out into the solar system. Every region beyond the 4 asteroid regions have high radiation. To move or build in such regions will cost you profit unless you have radiation shielding. Some action cards will now say shielded next to it, as you see here on the move and build cards. If you use one of these action cards from your hand, or yours or your opponent's infra on their HQ, your entire action will be shielded. During setup, we placed all of the bases now on our HQ. So you can also now build a shield factory at a location, and the entire region will be shielded. Any move that originated in a region that has a shield factory will now be shielded for that move. And then if you build in a region with a shield factory, it is also shielded from that radiation. You can also get the radiation resistant adaptation card that will also make your move and build actions shielded from radiation. If you use an opponent's shield factory, they will get their reward during the proper phase of the game. In Planeteers, if any of your move or build actions happen in a radiation zone and you're unshielded, you lose 2 profit. In Starfarers era, it will be 3 profit. And if you don't have enough profit to do the action, sorry, you can't. There's new distance transit modifiers for moving through the outer regions of the game board in Planeteers. All of those distances are going to be marked on this little section of the board, while the distances from the inner solar system where we start to any other location is all marked here. If you're moving from the Jupiter region or the asteroid region out to the further parts of our solar system in the outer regions, calculate your distance the same way as we did before during the Mariners era. If you want to do an action but you don't have enough action value to do it, you can spend 1 profit for each value needed up to 3 profit. So if I have 10 movement like I do here, but I need to get 13 movement value, I can spend 3 profit, 1, 2, 3, to take the action. If I only had 9 movement instead of 10 to start with, I wouldn't be able to take that action because I can't spend more than 3 profit. Also, the profit spent must be less than the value I already gathered. So if I play an Explore value of 3, I can only spend up to 2 profit to fill in the gap needed. We now have the Revelation action. This works the same as the Tangenetics action in Mariners, except we use the black cube for Revelation. When you claim an award in Planeteers, you can only claim one of the Planeteers contracts. Then you slide over the disc showing that you have completed that contract. If the contract was never completed in Mariners, but you complete it now in Planeteers, you slide it all the way over, claiming both rewards of 3 and 2 in this example. So going for contract rows where Mariners wasn't completed is definitely more attractive than the ones where they were completed. The first and second Beyond markers work the same as they did in Mariners, but this time they're in the Urt cloud in the top right part of the board. Remember, once a team moves there, they can't perform any actions, leaving them functionless for the rest of the era. There are 3 new bases in Planeteers: Secure, Shield Factory, and Exploiter. And some build requirements and benefits of the old bases have been modified. You can find all those in the rulebook and in the player aids. Planeteers adds the tan and navy blue progress cards. The adaptation cards are the tan ones, the breakthrough are the navy blue cards. When your tan cube has made a full circle on the progress wheel and ends or passes through the top space, you get an adaptation card. The black cube doing the same thing will get you a breakthrough card. You get to take the appropriate colored card from the progress board as long as it's available and it doesn't have the same title that you already have. When you get one, place it next to the HQ board and it will remain there for the rest of the game. You will immediately get any profit on the top circle of the card. You gain any benefit in the text, which can be a one-off benefit or an ongoing one. Some progress cards will have a prerequisite on it in a yellow box. If you haven't met that prereq, it can't be chosen. If a card adds value on it, unlike bases or infra, only you can use that value. Opponents are not allowed to use it. The endgame triggers in Planeteers is the exact same in Mariners, having 6 contracts completed or emptying the draw deck. Also, how to finish out players' turns once the endgame has triggered is the exact same as in Mariners. If you're continuing to the Starfarers era, there's only a few differences of deconstructing the previous era. If you decide to take a new discovery tile for your legacy production, get rid of the old one and put the new one in there and replace it. Take the old discovery tile and put it back in stock out of the game with the discovery tiles of that era. Take the old base that you had and put that back into your supplies. The only other new thing to do at the end of this era is if you have any progress cards, the adaptation or breakthrough cards that you have earned throughout this era, leave them next to your player HQ board. Don't discard those. The last change is to flip the Planeteers board over to the Starfarers board. Any other changes you have to make between eras is the exact same as you did during the Mariners era. We're now in the last era, the Starfarers era, 2150 to year 2299. We are way the heck out there in space right now. Everything in the Starfarers era is going to have the 6-sided star on it. First thing we'll do is shuffle those discovery tiles like before in other eras, and this time we have stacks of primary discovery tiles, secondary discovery tiles, and our alien discovery tiles. This era we're going to start with 3 space teams in our start spot, this time in Sol in the center of our board here, and we also have a built base, which is a shield factory in Sol. If someone collected the first Beyond token the last game, they can now use it to start one of their space teams in Alpha Centauri. And you start them right on the star. If you collected the second Beyond token during the Planeteer era, you can take one of your space teams and place it in Lumen 16 in the box furthest away from the star. Then you can get rid of the first and second Beyond tokens, removing them from the game, putting them back in the box as they are not needed in this era. For our action cards, we're going to do the same thing as we did in the last era. We're going to separate the start cards, give everyone 2 to start with, get a time card that everyone starts with, shuffle the other 2 time cards in the deck, then shuffle the start cards and place them on top of the deck. There's going to be new progress cards added to the right side of the sideboard. Put them in their indicated spots face up with the cards having the profit award on top of the ones without the profit award for each of the like cards, just like we did in the Planeteers phase. Gather all the hexagonal colony tiles that have the appropriate player number on the left-hand side of the tile. This one's for 3 and 4 player games. The sideboard has spots for all of these to go. The rest go back into the box. You won't use them this game. The player who has a space team on Alpha Centauri is going to go first this era. In this case, green. Let's say green's not there, then the least profit goes first, which we can see in this case is purple. And if tied, then we just randomly choose who goes first. There are 7 new rules for Starfarers. First, there's going to be a lot of multiplier values on actions. So like here, we have the move times 3. Remember, we do value calculations the SpaceCorp way and not the algebra way. So let's say we had a different setup here. Let's say you had a move card worth 2, one worth 5, one's a 4 multiplier, and another one worth a 4 multiplier value. You would first add the 2 non-multipliers together. So the 2 and the 5 would be 7 move. Then you take that 7 move and multiply it by 4, which is 28. Then you take that 28 and multiply it by 4 again for a 112 move value. That's way bigger. Remember when we started in the Mariners phase and we had like move values of like 3. Now we're up to in the hundreds. Or if you want to do the math this way, you could just do 7 times 16, whatever way you prefer. There's 4 types of regions we can move through in Starfarers. We have Sol, where we start. We have a bunch of empty regions. We have, most of them are just our normal star regions. And then we have 3 regions that are the Orion spurs that are in 3 corners of the board. In Starfarers, when you move, you just add up the totals in the diamonds for your distance. You don't add 1 for takeoff or landing. So let's say we want to move from Sol all the way out to Ross 780. You go 30 plus 20 plus 30 for a total of 80 to move out to Ross 780. If you're moving from Sol, you also can just use the chart that they have ready for us here. Each star system is a site that contains either 1, 2, or 3 exploration boxes in that site. If it has 2 or more exploration boxes, it's called a multi-star system. Also, the explore and build costs is right next to the name of the star in each system. You can never move to an Orion spur region unless you have a team departing from an adjacent region that also has a colony on that region. The first player to move a team into any Orion spur region gets an immediate 5 profit. If anyone else moves a team into any of the other unoccupied Orion spur regions, they'll get 2 profit immediately. Once in the Orion spur region, that team can no longer perform any actions for the rest of the game. You can never end a movement in an empty region. If anything mentions nearby regions, it means that it's within 20 distance from whatever is being referenced. So if you're referencing 61 Cygni, it's within 20 distance from Groombridge 34. So those 2 regions are nearby each other. Claiming contracts in Starfarers is very similar to the other eras. When you claim one, you'll move the orange disc over and get the award there. If you claim a contract that's been claimed in the Mariners era but not in the Planeteers era, like here, you slide it all the way over and you'll score the last 2 eras points, so 4. If you claim a contract that has never been claimed yet, like here, we move it all the way over and you get all 3 eras rewards, so that would be 8 profit or victory points. The way the star systems work when you move is when you move into a star system, you'll place your space team on the furthest box away from the star. You can have multiple different teams on the same box. Teams that are in these boxes are not allowed to be used for actions. At the beginning of each of your subsequent turns, you'll move your cube over 1 box. If you're already at the end and closest to the star, you'll move your cube onto the star, which then it will be free to start doing actions again. When you explore a multi-star system, first place a primary discovery tile where marked and immediately resolve its effects. Sometimes you may have a tile that says, discard this tile and draw an alien tile. If you do, you grab one of the purple alien tiles and you'd place it there instead. Then do the secondary discovery tiles one at a time, immediately resolving the effects before you move on to do the other secondary tile. And this one is a special one that says, discard this tile and draw a primary tile, which we would then do and put it there, and then resolve that effect. You're now going to claim all explore tiles, and you'll just put your explore marker on one of them, which signifies that you have claimed all of them. There's 2 of these primary discovery tiles that will tell you to discard the tile for an alien tile. If you reveal the alien tile Phobes, it's a hostile alien tile, and you have to move one of your space teams that's in that region back to Sol. You do that unless you own the Energy Fields Breakthrough card, which then negates you from moving back to Sol. If you built other discovery tiles in that region, you would not get any further benefits from them. Let's say in a future turn, I move from Sol back to where Phobos is and I build this secure base there. I will immediately get the rewards that I wasn't previously able to get for revealing these two discovery tiles. Now for a different example, let's say I revealed a different alien discovery called introves. When you reveal introves, bases cannot be built in this system unless that player owns the cooperative, empathy, or the sensory focus adaptations. Otherwise, that red base 0 means that no bases can be built here. When you build a base, you build bases on all the region's discovery tiles with that one build action. You take the build cost for that region plus any modifiers on the discovery tiles. So here, we'd have a build of 6 plus 4 for a base plus 4 for a base, so it would cost us 14 or more to build a base there. And then you put a base down for each location within that region. If you build in a location where an opponent has a claim of the discoveries, they get 2 profit total like normal. And then some bases, requirements, and benefits have been modified from the previous eras that are all shown in the rulebook and in the player aids. We now have colonies in the Starfarers era. For your action, you can colonize a region where you have your bases on all the discovery tiles and there isn't already a colonization token there. You do not need a team to be in that region. And you can select any colony tile available on the sideboard as long as you can afford it. Each colony tile has diamonds on their tops. And this is how many colony points you need to select that colony tile. The way you get colony points are written on the sideboard, but we'll go over them quickly here. Some of the discovery tiles in this era have colony points on them. So you'll take all the discovery tiles that have colony points on them in that star region and add them up. Then you get 1 point for each of the following. If you have a colony in a nearby region again is a space that's next to yours that's with 20 distance or less. If there's an industrial base in the region, if there are 2 or more bases in the region, if you remove one of your teams out of the game from that region, if you use infra and or cards with a build of 8, you'll get a colony point. If you spend $5 per point, and if you have the Enviro Tolerance adaptation card. The colony benefits are also on the sideboard, but you get 1 colony point for creating a colony in a nearby region. You'll be eligible to conduct a move action to any adjacent Orion Spur region, and then at the end of the era, you'll score profit, or which also is points, based off how many colonies you control. Lots of the colonies will also have special abilities, and there is a chart in the player aid and the rulebook to show what those are. And on the sideboard. The Starfarers era ends the same way that the previous eras end. Then some of the Starfarer colonies have an end of an era bonus on them, and you'll award those bonuses now. Then change your profit / points by how many colonies you own. If you have no colonies, you're gonna lose 1 point profit. If you have 1 colony, you'll gain 1 profit. And then if you have up to 4 or more colonies, you're gonna gain 13 profit. Whoever has the highest profit over all 3 eras is the winner of the game. Yay, we won! If we were tied, the win goes to the player with the highest total colony value. If there's a second tiebreaker, it goes to whoever has the most adaptation and breakthrough cards in their player area. If still tied, you will have a great business merger between the two of you, and you share the win. Welcome back to Mission Control. Well, that was my thorough how to play of SpaceCorp 2025 to 2300 AD. If you want to find out my review, my honest review of the game, check out my review video on it. Thank you, of course, to GMT Games and Rachel for providing me the review copy, and most importantly, peace and stay cool.